Happy Thursday, readers. So the work we're going to start today, it will actually take you 2 class periods. So my goal for you is that you're going to finish this, you'll finish the assignment, and then once you've finished, you're going to jump back into the work with your book. You're going to make sure you finish your summative pressure chart, and then you're going to continue some new work, which I'll assign at the end of this lesson. Okay? So our learning target today is I can plan my thinking work and attempt it as I read with focus to character development. Your essential question is, what sort of thinking will I be doing today? So the first thing before we start though, guys, I actually want you to go into the module for today. It's Deep Study of Character, session 9. Go ahead, you're going to open up where it says Main Street by Jacqueline Woodson, read aloud. You need to go ahead and open up these slides, which is what I'm looking at, but I want you to be able to follow along on your own. And then you're going to open up the copy of the short story. Now, when you open this up, this is mine. I own it. You don't. So you can't actually do anything but look at it. I want you to be able to highlight this as we read today. So you're going to go to File, Make a Copy. Okay? And then make sure that you stay in the copy. I would just close out mine, the original that doesn't say copy, so you won't be confused. And now this one you can highlight as we go. And the color I really want you to focus on today is orange. And I will explain in the instructions. But just a refresher, if you don't know how to highlight, you're going to select this tool right here and you're going to select orange. Okay? All right, so let's go back. Let's make sure we have everything. So you need these slides open. You need to make a copy of the short story, open it here, select that file, make a copy, create your own. All right, and then you guys are watching the video right now, so you've already done the third step. So, and then what I want you to do just to prepare, go ahead and you're gonna go back and go ahead and click on the session 9 Google form. Now I'll explain this as we go, but as you follow along with Main Street as I read it and we're working on our highlights, I want you to complete this form. It's going to be due on Friday. Okay, so there, the first thing you can just go ahead and write your first and last name. What class period do you have me for? And then go ahead and make sure you have these up so that way you can easily go back as we work today. You can follow along with the questions. They're going to be in the slides for you, but that way you can just go ahead and start typing your answer. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started. So readers, today I want to invite you to do something that powerful readers do, to investigate the impact of setting on characters. To do this work, you'll consider not just the physical characteristics of the setting, the place where this takes place, but when there is also a mood or an atmosphere, which there always is in a place. So we're not just thinking about what does it look like, but we're thinking about what does it feel like. So here's a tip. When the setting seems ordinary, like it's just a town, you have to think extra hard because remember, you're an investigator. So some readers would say that the setting is just a town, thinking the setting doesn't really matter. But you'll be the kind of reader today who asks, what kind of town? Is it the kind of town where people are kind to each other? Or is it a place where some people feel included and others feel left out? Because when you ask those kinds of questions, when you're an investigator while you're reading, you'll develop theories about the mood or atmosphere of this particular place and how it's shaping our characters. So we're going to try out this thinking work. We're going to read a new story today. It's called Main Street by Jacqueline Woodson, an author I know some of you know and love. I do. She's amazing. If you have not checked out Jacqueline Woodson, please do, because truthfully, her writing is so good and it's such a joy to read. Go ahead and start a new page in your notebook for your thinking work if you want to, or just do it in the form that I've set up for you. Okay. Now, if you're setting up the page, go ahead and title it Main Street Thinking Work. All right, I'm going to go ahead and begin. And while I begin, just start thinking about how would you describe the setting of this place, where it takes place, okay? Autumn now. The leaves here in New Hampshire are the ones on postcards. Bright red and heartbreakingly gold. Colors so deep and intense, it seems it doesn't belong in nature. They sell the postcards at the pharmacy on Main Street, and tourists buy tons of them, scribbling things like gorgeous here and right out of our town, and bringing you home some maple syrup. And I can imagine living here one day. Celeste said that's how her mother found Peterborough. She had come up with a busload of people wanting to see the leaves turn colors. And she said to herself, maybe one day I'll live here. Celeste said maybe she was so busy looking at the colored leaves, she didn't look around to see that the leaves were the only color in this town. There's a coffee shop on Main, right next to the pharmacy. Even though egg creams weren't always on the menu, the people coming here to look at the leaves kept asking for them. So the owner finally added them, and people coming from the city drink them by the gallon and write their postcards. I haven't learned to like egg creams, but I sit at the coffee shop some days, drinking Cokes and looking over people's shoulders to watch them write the same things, over and over and over. Sometimes I think I'll see Celeste getting out of a car and running into the drugstore with her mother. But Celeste is gone now. This town is both completely different and absolutely the same without her. This story is calling for us to think about character traits, isn't it? That'll be true at the start of most stories you read, when the big job for readers is to get to know the characters. The good thing is that with all the work we've been doing, you guys already know really great ways to think about characters. So go ahead and go to that form, that Google form for session 9, and I want you to respond to the first question, and make sure you're responding in complete sentences and you're providing evidence from the story. So our first question is, what are some character traits we might use to describe our character, our narrator? So for me, I'm thinking that one that I might write down is the narrator is quite an observer, right? She pays such close attention to the tourists who come through the town and knows the history of the egg cream sales in the coffee shop. I'm going to go back and reread the same excerpt, and this time I want you to focus on the mood or atmosphere of the setting. So, how does this place make you feel based on the descriptions you're given? Okay. And as you follow along, I want you to highlight any powerful quotes or 3D details about the setting, the atmosphere in orange. Ask yourself, what kind of town is this? What's the mood, the vibe, or the feeling? Is it a welcoming place? Is it something else? So remember, we're thinking about the mood, the atmosphere, and the setting. Highlight any 3D details or great quotes about those three in orange, okay? Autumn now. The leaves here in New Hampshire are the ones on postcards. Bright red and heartbreaking gold. Colors so deep and intense, it seems it doesn't belong in nature. They sell the postcards at the pharmacy on Main Street, and tourists buy tons of them, scribbling things like, gorgeous here, and right out of our town, and bringing you home some maple syrup, and I can imagine living here one day. Celeste said that's how her mother found Peterborough. She had come up with a busload of people wanting to see the leaves turn colors. And she said to herself, maybe one day I'll live here. Celeste said, maybe she was so busy looking at the colored leaves, she didn't look around to see that the leaves were the only color in this town. There's a coffee shop on Main, right next to the pharmacy. Even though egg creams weren't always on the menu, the people coming here to look at the leaves kept asking for them. So the owner finally added them, and people coming from the city drink them by the gallon and write their postcards. I haven't learned to like egg creams, but I sit at the coffee shop some days, drinking Cokes and looking over people's shoulders to watch them write the same things, over and over and over. Sometimes I think I'll see Celeste getting out of a car and running into the drugstore with her mother. But Celeste is gone now. This town is both completely different and absolutely the same without her. Okay, in that same Google form in Canvas, I want you to respond now to question 2. Make sure you're providing evidence. So anything you highlighted in orange could be evidence. Tell me, what kind of town is this? And you can go ahead and just start it off by saying the town seems. How would you describe it? And give me some evidence from what you highlighted in orange. And then I have a third question for you. What is the mood of the story? Provide some evidence from the story. What did you highlight in orange? If you need to go back and look at it, you can. You can pause this if you need to. And a reminder that mood is how the writing makes you feel. So as you're reading this, what were some words, some descriptions? What kind of vibe, feeling were you getting from this place? So you could start off with the mood of the story seems, and then give me some evidence. And if at any time, guys, the reason why I recorded this is if you need to pause this while you do it, just pause me before you go forward, okay? And our fourth question, does this town seem like a welcoming place? Why or why not? And then you know what I'm going to say, provide some evidence from the story. So you could start off with the town seems like a welcoming place because, tell me why, give me some evidence. What did you highlight in orange? The town does not seem like a welcoming place because, tell me why, give me some evidence. So readers, you've done some nice work now. You're thinking about the text with the lens of setting. So many readers would have just said, it's just a town, but you reread thinking about the mood or atmosphere of this place. It turns out it's kind of tricky, right? It feels like the tourists feel one way about it, and the narrator and Celeste might feel a different way. Let's investigate how this atmosphere, touristy, mostly white, small town, kind of fake, perfect, might shape our characters. Let's see how the narrator and Celeste's actions and decisions will be affected by this atmosphere. So as you follow along, I want you to highlight any powerful quotes or 3D details, particularly about this town in orange. And anything that surprises or confuses you, I want you to highlight it in red. So here we go. Last winter, the snow fell so long and rose so high, my father hired a man from Keene to plow it. When the man arrived, his huge plow moved silently through the mass of snow. The silence surprised me. How could so much power exist inside such quiet? As I watched, pressing my head against the window, I said to my father, I want to move through the world that quietly, that powerfully. Where did you come from? My father said, his eyes at once laughing and worried. I had a mother once, I said into the pain. She used to say things. Don't say that, my father said. You still do. Don't ever say that. But he is wrong. I don't have a mother anymore. It's just my father now, and the leaves, and the snow, and the memory. There are things you're not allowed to say. When I was very young, it was the curses I'd hear my mother use, the words erupting from her mouth, but disconnected, too ugly to belong to someone as beautiful as my mother. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror, saying the words over and over. My father found me this way. Neither of us knew that exactly 8 days from that moment, my mother would move on to the next place. We thought the doctors were wrong. We prayed, please, doctors, in the name of our Holy Father, be wrong. What are you saying? My father said when he heard me. Don't ever say those words, ever. But Mama says them. She's in pain, my father said. Those words should only be said by people in pain. All right, let's pause here. Let's go to your Google form, question number 5. What are some words you would use to describe this town now? Why? What did you read that made you feel this way? So in light of this new evidence, look at your orange highlights. How would you describe this town? I'm going to go back here just to give you a minute. I particularly want you to focus where she says, there are things you're not allowed to say. Maybe you're not allowed to say the things that are too painful. Those two lines, what do you think that suggests about this place and how the narrator must act to fit in? So this step, we're trying to use the clues, right, that we're given. And we're trying to analyze how the setting is affecting the whole story. So for me, when I'm doing this work, guys, I like to actually go back to the beginning. And I like to see the details I'm given and I try to piece them together because I'm going into investigator mode, right? So when we first saw the town, there was these details about it being too beautiful to be true, right? It was kind of fake perfect. All these tourists are coming, right? And they're writing on these postcards. But something that's sticking out to me now, that line that she says, I'll go back to it. Oh, sorry, I went too far. Apologies. This line right here, I want to move through the world that quietly, that powerfully. And then the dad just kind of wants her, it's like he's trying to control how she's acting. You know, he doesn't want her to use swear words. She can't say out loud that her mother is gone. So all these details are making me think two things. This town is a place that looks pretty on the outside, but doesn't make room for everyone or for feelings that aren't pretty. And I don't feel like it's a place where there are very many people of minority of color, right? Because of what we read before. Celeste, she was teasing, like, the leaves were the only color in this town. Her mother didn't pay attention. So being an investigator, I'm picking up that our main characters are girls of color, but they're two of the only girls of color in their town. So do you see how I'm actually like, I'm being an investigator? None of that was said outright to me, right? But I'm using the clues to piece together not only just the physical setting of this place, but the atmosphere, the mood, and how it's affecting my narrator and the other main characters. Okay. So I'm going to read this part one more time. And if you didn't catch on to any of that, go ahead and highlight in orange anything that's being said or any descriptions of this place that you think is affecting our main character, the narrator. Last winter, the snow fell so long and rose so high. My father hired a man from Keene to plow it. When the man arrived, his huge plow moved silently through the mass of snow. The silence surprised me. How could so much power exist in inside such quiet? As I watched, pressing my head against the window, I said to my father, I want to move through the world that quietly, that powerfully. Where did you come from? My father said, his eyes at once laughing and worried. I had a mother once, I said into the pain. She used to say things. Don't say that, my father said. You still do. Don't ever say that. But he is wrong. I don't have a mother anymore. It's just my father now, and the leaves, and the snow, and the memory. There are things you're not allowed to say. When I was very young, it was the curses I'd heard my mother use, the words erupting from her mouth but disconnected, too ugly to belong to someone as beautiful as my mother. One morning I stood in front of the mirror saying the words over and over. My father found me this way. Neither of us knew that exactly 8 days from that moment, my mother would move on to the next place. We thought the doctors were wrong. We prayed, please, doctors, in the name of our Holy Father, be wrong. "What are you saying?" my father said when he heard me. "Don't ever say those words, ever." "But Mama says them." "She's in pain," my father said. "Those words should only be said by people in pain." Okay, so let's go back to our Google form and let's discuss what's happening. So, how does the setting, this place, affect our narrator? Make sure you're providing some evidence. Okay, as I reread this excerpt, I want you to focus with the lens of setting where this story takes place. So highlight any 3D details or quotes about this place and how it is affecting our characters. If you find something new to add to question 6 in the form, please add to it, okay? But first, let's consider what we know about the setting and how it's affecting the narrator, okay? So when we study a place, we consider the season or the time period or the city where it takes place. But the setting is it's more than just the physical, right? It's also the mood or atmosphere of a place. The way a place shapes a person is often about the way it feels. So I'm thinking in the first scene, the beautiful autumn leaves and the tourist. It sounds like it's a beautiful town, but the way the narrator talks about it, it doesn't seem like it feels as beautiful as it looks. It sounds a little fake and a little too perfect. In the part we just read, there's snow everywhere, covering everything over. There is the scene where the dad coaching the narrator not to say negative things about her mother being dead. That's part of the setting too. It's part of the atmosphere the narrator is growing up in, and that's shaping her as a character, as a person. So let's reread and be on the lookout for what kind of place this is and how it's affecting the narrator. We now know she is going through a lot of loss. As we reread, let's ask ourselves, how is this place affecting her as she tries to deal with her mother's death? Last winter, the snow fell so long and rose so high, my father hired a man from Keene to plow it. When the man arrived, his huge plow moved silently through the mass of snow. The silence surprised me. How could so much power exist inside such quiet? As I watched, pressing my head against the window, I said to my father, "I want to move through the world that quietly, that powerfully." "Where did you come from?" my father said, his eyes at once laughing and worried. "I had a mother once," I said into the pain. "She used to say things." "Don't say that," my father said. "You still do. Don't ever say that." But he is wrong. I don't have a mother anymore. It's just my father now, and the leaves, and the snow, and the memory. There are things you're not allowed to say. When I was very young, it was the curses I'd hear my mother use, the words erupting from her mouth, but disconnected, too ugly to belong to someone as beautiful as my mother. One morning I stood in front of the mirror, saying the words over and over. My father found me this way. Neither of us knew that exactly 8 days from that moment, my mother would move on to the next place. We thought the doctors were wrong. We prayed, "Please, doctors, in the name of our Holy Father, be wrong." "What are you saying?" my father said when he heard me. "Don't ever say those words, ever." "But Mama says them." "She's in pain," my father said. "Those words should only be said by people in pain." Okay, so let's go back to that Google form. Question 7. How is this place affecting the narrator as she tries to deal with her mother's death? What evidence can you find to support your answer? As we read a bit more, I want you to see if there's any part of the story suggesting new thinking about this place. Or are you finding more evidence that's confirming that this is a place that only welcomes certain people and only certain feelings? So highlight any 3D details or quotes about this place in orange and try to find some evidence of how it's affecting our characters. If you find something new to add to question 7 or any of the other questions in the form, please go ahead and add to it, okay? I wanted to tell him I was in pain. I wanted to show him where it hurt. Point to my head, my heart, my belly, say, "Here, Daddy," and here, and here. But I didn't. I was 8 years old. He would say I was too young to know real pain. After all, he'd say, "You've never even had a skinned knee, Treetop." Then rub my head and smile that halfway real, halfway crying smile. That winter, I hurt every place my mother hurt. As I pressed wet cloths to her sweating forehead, as I let her hold my hand to wait out the pain, as I read to her from gossip magazines and gently brushed her thinning hair, each twist of pain moving through her moved through me. I wanted to tell my father this, that once I had lived inside my mother, a part of her. I wanted to say, how could I not know her pain? "What kind of name is Treetop anyway?" Celeste asked the first time she heard my father call me this. We were 9 years old, and Celeste was my new best friend. She had moved to New Hampshire from New York City. She was tall and brown and beautiful. Her mother had modeled for magazines. The first time I asked him where babies come from, he said treetops. Celeste squinted, pulled her lips to the side. I had practiced doing this in the mirror, but it never looked all the amazing things hers looked. "You know that's not true, right?" "Yeah, of course." But the name stuck. "My dad would never say that," Celeste told me. He'd say, "Look it up," but he'd never call me, "Look it up." Just saying. We laughed. From that moment we became friends. It seemed we spent so much of our time laughing. She told me her father spent his days figuring out what to do with other people's money. He likes counting it, she said, and recounting it, and recounting it. He's tall like me, she said. She said her parents were taking a break from each other. After all, 11 years is a long time to be together, don't you think? We laughed. From the moment we became friends, it seemed we spent so much of our time laughing. Oh, guys, I'm really sorry because I just realized that this double copied. Okay, we're going to skip that part and go forward. Apologies. "You miss her, huh?" I nodded. "I miss my dad," Celeste said, "and I miss New York. I know me some missing." I looked up and she was smiling. Then we were laughing again. That quickly, we were looking at each other and laughing so hard we had to bend over, nearly falling out of our swings. I had never known anyone brown, and Celeste had never lived in a place where brown people didn't. It's Negroless, she said, smiling. It's a Negro-free zone. I thought we didn't say that word anymore. Celeste looked at me. "You can't, but I can. It's in the language rulebook, I swear." "You're lying, right?" "There isn't really a language rulebook." "Nope, not lying. There's all kinds of rule books. The New Hampshire rule book says only one family that's not white can live here at a time. When I move away, another family will come. I swear. It's in the rule book." Celeste looked at me a moment, then smiled. "I swear." "But you're not going to move away." I wasn't smiling. "Not tomorrow." There are all kinds of rule books. Okay, so let's go to our Google form. What are you thinking about this place now? We just got a lot of new evidence. So what is it like for the people who live there? And I misspoke before. I'm sorry, guys. So our narrator, Treetop, we now know, her nickname. She's white, but Celeste is brown. Celeste is black. Based on the discussion they just had, now remember, you're going to be an investigator. How would you describe this place for Celeste or anyone of minority who's coming into this town? And make sure you give me some evidence from the story to support your answer. Okay, so you definitely want to continue thinking and jotting about characters as you read in your fiction book. Remember, anytime we do a read aloud, it's just to give you some skills, some tools that I want you to try out in your own reading. So today we learned how it can pay off to not only study our character traits, but to investigate the setting, especially the mood, because it may influence and shape the character or the characters. So to investigate the influence of setting on characters, I have some skills that I want you to try out. So the first one is we want to ask ourselves, what kind of place is this? We want to consider the mood of the place. We want to investigate how the psychology of a place shifts and how those shifts affect our characters. We want to notice how the author's language sparks emotions and images within our minds. We want to ask, is something in the setting pulling a character between competing pressures? Consider how group dynamics or powerful individuals may influence a place. And pay attention to backstory to gain new insights into characters. And now it's your time to read. So you're going to find a quiet place. Go ahead and jot down what the setting is like in your current book. So, what kind of place is this? What is the atmosphere like? How are people treating each other? And then be sure to respond to the final question in our Google form number 10. Tell me what book you're currently reading, because I know some of you have ended a book and you're in a new book. So tell me the current book you're reading, what page are you on? And then I want to know, what are your writing and reading goals for today? And you can use the questions to the left of this slide to help you. Remember, we should be focusing on character traits still, but we're also going to start focusing on setting, mood, atmosphere. And then once you guys are done with the Google form, you don't have to hit submit, but then you're going to click on the last part of the module for today. It says upload your copy of the story. And I want you to upload your copy of Main Street because I want to see that you have been highlighting. That's really important, guys, okay? And then you will just submit that and you can just upload it from your drive. All right, guys, if you have any questions with this, email me. If you're in class, just raise your hand and I will help you. Happy reading, everyone.